All right. Can everyone see the PowerPoint? All right. So the title today is Leveraging the Law for Intellectual Currency. And introduction, I'm Gabriel Kingdom, the lawyer and owner of the Kingdom Law Firm LLC. And of course, being a lawyer is a great blessing, a great privilege. But uniquely is that not only am I a lawyer, but I also am a business owner of my own law firm. And I've been doing that going on 12 years now, practicing law and business ownership. And prior to becoming a lawyer, prior to becoming a business owner, I didn't have training in it. I didn't have a background in it. I didn't even really have a real desire to be a business owner. Of course, I wanted to be a lawyer, but my goal was to work for another law firm. But because the economy was tight in 2013, just by the will of the Most High, I had to use my license, which I got, and turn it into a business mechanism in order to feed myself at the time. So a lot of what I have learned and I'm still learning is through trial and error. So I don't want to you to think that I know it all, but the thing is that I'm learning. And I think when you go through this process, not having it all in the beginning, you're a little more appreciative of the nuggets that you get along the path, along the journey. So I hope that I can translate that in a very down to earth way that will equip and empower everyone who's on this conference today. And as far as our areas of the law, we specialize in personal injury law, business law, and also contract law. And contract law is the area of the law that I want to spend a lot of time on today, because contracts is the backbone to the economy, the backbone to relationships, the backbone even to spirituality and religion, as we'll talk about shortly. So just keep that in mind. Contract law, and as more as the more we can understand the concept and the power of a contract, the more powerful we will be in business, and wealth creation, and as entrepreneurs. So to go into the historical, ancient biblical roots of contract law or covenant law, I have the verse in Exodus 24, verses 3 to 8. But before I go there, I want to discuss the modern legal elements of what a contract is. A contract is, or it consists of, an offer, number two, the acceptance of that offer, and then number three, the contract has to be of some kind of consideration or value. You could say money, but there has to be an offer, an acceptance, and a consideration. And if all those elements are met, then it's a valid contract and the court will enforce it. So with that modern understanding of what a contract is in today's society, let's look and see what the ancient biblical roots of contract is in the Bible. And I'll read from Exodus 24:3, and this is entitled The Covenant Confirmed. So covenant is a contract as well. So a contract is in business, but it's also religious. So the subtitle to this verse is The Covenant or the Contract Confirmed. And it reads, when Moses went and told the people all the Lord's words and laws, so that's an offer, they responded with one voice. They said, everything the Lord has said, we will do. So that's an acceptance. So you have the offer, Moses telling them what the laws are, what they're supposed to do. And then they responded with one voice, everything the Lord has said, we will do. So that shows that this concept of contract law that we have today in America is an ancient 4,000, 6,000 year old concept that has its origins in the Hebrew Bible. So I'll continue reading. He got up early the next morning, that's Moses, and built an altar at the foot of the mountain and set up 12 stone pillars representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Then Moses sent young Israelite men, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed young bulls as fellowship offerings to the Lord. Moses took half of the blood and put it in bowls, and the other half he splashed against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant, which is the laws, the contract, and read it to the people. So once again, he's offering, hey, these are the laws. And they responded, we will do everything the Lord has said. We will obey. So that's an acceptance of the offer. And then Moses took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, this is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with us, or has made with you, in accordance with all these words. So the blood is the consideration of the contract, the offer, the acceptance, and we're going to seal it with this blood. So it's a blood contract or a blood covenant. So contracts have their roots in the Bible, in the Hebrew Bible. And that's a unique story, because even today in Hollywood, in certain circles, when they sign contracts, they put blood on the contracts. This is not something that's widely known, but if you know that they are still patterning themselves from this ancient Hebrew tradition. So I say that to say, us as Hebrews, we have a tradition in the law. Moses was a priest, but he also was a lawyer. He was, one of the first lawyers of the Bible. So were the Levites. The whole Levite tribes were a tribe of priests and lawyers. They were the lawyers for their day. Even when you look at the term Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, Torah translates to English. They translate it as law. So, going back to the ancient roots of the Bible, and we see that there's a history of the law of lawyers. And then even going to the Apostle Paul with the New Testament, he was also trained in the law. And many believe that's the reason why the Most High used him, because he was able to articulate things in a very legal way to express the good news of Christ to the Gentiles. So this history of contract law is just to show the different elements of contracts, where it's not just in business, but it also is the backbone of spirituality and religion, any jurisdiction that you may be in. So, and regardless of your religion, whether you're a Christian, a Hebrew Israelite, Muslim, I think it's wise for our people as African American melanated people to really be aficionados in the law, no matter what jurisdiction you're in, because the laws of the country you're in are going to govern your actions. They're going to govern your business transactions. So the more knowledgeable you are, the more you can travel with ease and with comfort. And being being acclimated with the law is more than just having a law license. Myself, I have a license to practice law, but all of y'all can be lawyers in your own right. Of whenever I get a contract, I'm gonna read the whole contract. I'm not just gonna sign. I'm gonna ask questions when someone gives me a contract. When my leasing officer gives me a lease, I'm gonna ask questions about the lease. I'm gonna ask and see if we can change certain things in the lease to fit my my prerogative or my interests. So being a lawyer and having a license to practice law are different things, but all of us can be lawyers in your everyday life. So that's the religious history of contracts and contracts law. So now we go to the United States of America, and there's a contract that governs the United States of America called the U.S. Constitution. And what it is a set of laws, foundational laws that the U.S. must follow. And if the country doesn't follow it, then they're in breach of the contract, and they're in default. So that's extremely important for all of us to know what those constitutional rights are, so that we can move freely and we can move in power. And an important part is, the USA, if they were to violate the Constitution or contract with the people, then they would be in breach and they would default. And the reason why the United States is renowned throughout the world is because we're a nation of laws, a nation that follows laws. And just like Mr. Johnson talked about the personal credit rating of each of us and how to get the credit score high, countries also have credit scores and credit ratings. And if America were to violate its constitution, America would lose its credit rating. And instead of banks putting their money in the United States, they'll put their money in China and France and in Russia, other countries. United States is the world reserve currency, the dollars. And that's because we're a country that protects laws. We're a country of courts. We're a country of justice. So you have power in understanding your law and holding anyone accountable. All right, so now that we know the law, the contract of the United States, how do we use it to our advantage for intellectual currency? So going to some of the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Whenever I see first, it rings a bell that first must be important. For them to put this as the first amendment in the U.S. Constitution must be important. So let's read it. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof of religion. So essentially, it's stating that the government is not to prohibit your free exercise of your religion, and that's powerful. Other countries didn't have that in 1787, but America's Constitution, we're set on the country has to respect your decision to be a Hebrew Israelite, to be a Christian, to be a Jew, to be a Muslim, to be an atheist. And that's that's something that's in the foundation. And also the First Amendment also has freedom of speech or the press, the freedom to petition the government. So I know sometimes we hear these terms in everyday passing, but the question is, where does it come from? And it comes from the U.S. Constitution, which is the contract of the United States government. And specifically, it comes from the First Amendment. So when you go to freedom of religion, one thing that comes to mind that I've actually used to help clients is, let's say you may have had a life of crime for 30, 40 years, and then you found the Most High, you found Allah, you found your way through religion, and now you want to transition against that history that you had. And it may be hard for you to get a job because whenever someone like Googles your name, Darrell Jackson, it shows all these arrests that you had. So what you can do when you are in tune with the law to your advantage is you can file a legal name change to align with your new religion so that you're no longer Darrell Jackson. All those old charges aren't showing up no more. And if it's genuine, the courts will have to approve it because it's your religion. So I know sometimes in these secular settings, we strive away from religion, but legally, sometimes you can use it to your advantage. You know what I mean? So that's something that, I've done with clients before. And that's just a way of, just using the intellectual capacity, your intellectual capital to give you a fresh start. And you can, you change your driver's license, you change your social security a name, you can't change your social security number, but essentially you have a way to really have that fresh start that God or, the higher power allowed you to have. And also with the name change, it's not very hard. Like it may cost like $500, and us as lawyers, all of us are lawyers. You can Google online how to file a name change in the county that you live in, and it's a straightforward process. You don't need to hire a lawyer to do it. You can, but it's just something that you can do if you have the time to dedicate towards it. And then also the contract of the U.S. Constitution. Just want to have some other amendments. The Fourth Amendment, the right of privacy, essentially against unreasonable searches and seizures. So the police, they can't just come to your house and come inside your house unless they have a warrant, like a legal warrant that a court approved for a specific item or a specific area that they're trying to find. So that's different than other countries. Other countries, the police, they can pretty much do what they want, but America is unique. Your house is your castle. And then you go into the Fifth Amendment, which is very important. And a key quote is that nor shall a person be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And due process of law is just saying, hey, before you take my house, before you take my license, you have to give me a hearing. You have to tell me what the allegations are that I violated, allow me a time to respond, and then if what you said holds up true and the evidence supports it, only then can you take away someone's life, liberty, or property. And the property standpoint comes into play when it deals with actual real property. So if you're a property owner, it's not really easy in America for someone to take your property. If you're a tenant and you're just leasing, of course, they just put an eviction on the door, and you have to get out, or of course you can still contest it in court. But being a property owner, you have more rights to where a bank would have to foreclose against your mortgage in court, file a lawsuit, and during that time, which can take months, you may have a way to earn enough money to pay the debt off. Every state is different. Some states, they require a foreclosure lawsuit in order to take someone's mortgage. Some states don't. So of course, we have to be lawyers in that regard. And then the Sixth Amendment, you have a right to trial by jury, and also you have a right to a lawyer in a criminal defense case. So I know we watch cops, they read them the Miranda rights. You do understand anything you say can be held against you. You have a right to a lawyer. If you can't afford one will be given to you. And it's not enough just to hear that, but we got to say, where does it come from? And it comes from right here, this contract with the United States Constitution and its citizens, the Sixth Amendment, this Fifth Amendment. And then also there's another, I think there was another, there's a 14th Amendment as well. I may not have it on the PowerPoint, but the 14th Amendment is what was passed after the U.S. Civil War, and it said that all citizens born in America would be allowed equal protection under the law, and that was aimed at the Black people who, before the Civil War, they could be owned as slavery, but then after the Civil War, after blood was shed, the contract was amended to where now the country, the government cannot belittle or discriminate against someone based on them being Black, them being white. So that's another very important part of the Constitution as well, that should empower us and empower you. And now going more towards the wealth component of today's conference is real estate and automobiles. And real estate and automobiles, as you know, is the largest sectors of the economy in America. Property values in America stand at upward of $50 trillion. Yes, that's $50 trillion. So when you're dealing with real estate, you can be on one side of the transaction. You can be a landowner or a land renter. And if it's 50 trillion valuation in real estate, all of us should be finding ways to be on the landowner side of that transaction. Because even when you rent to your apartment, you're still in real estate. You're still in the real estate market. It's just you're on the side of the renter instead of the owner. And one example that I have, and this is personal to me, is that like right now, my office, my law firm office, I'm renting. It's expensive. My lease ends in a couple days, and what I'm working on is buying a second or a third property, and the bottom of the property will be my law office, and the top of the property will be a residential suite for tenants. So I rent out the top of the property for tenants or Airbnb, and then the bottom of my property where I'm working doing the law, I'm kind of paying myself. So even no matter what happens, I have cash flow coming in to pay my mortgage to the bank for the property, and then the property is just continuing to grow in value. So that's another way to use intellectual property or intellectual currency and using the law to build your wealth. And then also dealing with automobiles. Automobiles is the other, really large sector of the economy. I looked it up, and it's around like a $1 trillion industry in America. So once again, which side do you want to be on in the transaction? And a used auto dealer's license is something that's powerful as well, and that allows you to purchase vehicles at wholesale prices, and then you can sell them to at retail prices, or you can hold them, put a dealer tag on them, and you just use the license for benefits to yourself economically. And here's just some examples. I got online like a 2018 Honda Accord. You go to the dealership, you're gonna pay 18,500. You get it at auction, it may be 14,000. So you're saving money in that regard. And you're investing in a license that's going to produce revenue and cash for yourself. And even if you're not trying to be a real estate broker every day, every hour, you still can work with those in your group, and maybe have someone under you to really do the ins and out, and you're just using your license as an asset to transact the capital, to transact the funds. And I know I gave this example with brother Joseph Joshua of, he's a Kentucky resident, and he may not know the laws in Georgia that are more favorable to used car dealers. Whereas in Georgia, you don't like to get a used car dealer's license. You don't actually have to own a used car lot, because used car lot is going to cost a lot in money and time and real estate. But in Georgia, as long as you have just one office door, one closed office that's dedicated to your transactions, the Georgia uh, Georgia state will allow you to have a used car dealer's license. So I'm like, hey, Mr. Joshua, you can leverage my license, my Georgia license, Georgia used auto dealer's license, and we use your expertise of knowing what vehicles to purchase. You fly to Georgia, you sign the contract of the client, and you leave, and you got $2,000-3,000 per car that we have sold. So this is examples of just thinking beyond the box and using the law to build wealth for yourself and for your families and for your generations. And once again, just dealing with the fact that a license is an asset. And of course, you can get different licenses. An HVAC license, well, as soon as you get that, you automatically have a way to earn revenue for yourself. A real estate sales license, that's another good license. A CDL license, commercial driver's license. You have a way to generate revenue for yourself. A home inspector's license. Whenever a home is closed, it has to go through a home inspector. So you learn that, you become a home inspector, and everyone in your circle will probably use you, because there's not a lot of home inspectors that that a lot of us know. You know what I mean? When it's time for a home inspector, we Google around, search around, and we just find someone online. But if you are already in that market and there's not a lot of people in your social circle in that market, then you're gonna have a lot of customers. Of course, be good at your craft, but the key is the licenses. And then also going to the U.S. Constitution, the First Amendment, freedom of religion, free exercise of religion. A lot of people are already in congregations, but why not utilize the laws to your benefit and starting they call it a nonprofit entity, legal entity, a 501c3 is what it's called, and that's just based on the tax code, so that whenever businesses want to donate to your congregation, they can get a tax write-off. So they may be more willing to donate 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, because that allows them to pay less in their taxes. And often, we think that people are just being generous, but in reality, these companies, they're being strategic. They're trying to maximize their tax exposure. So why not get in that market as well? Start a 501c3. It may take 2 to 3 months to get all the paperwork submitted to the IRS or to the state, but it's something that could really be beneficial to your market. And then going to the limited liability company, which a lot of people know as LLC, that's another asset. So whenever you own a company, you own an asset. It could be a single member LLC where you're the only person over the HVAC company, or you can have multiple owners of an LLC. And whenever you have multiple owners of an LLC, it's always wise to have an operating agreement. And what an operating agreement is for the LLC is it's the contract of the LLC specifying who owns what percentage. Joseph Joshua owns 30%. Gabriel Kingdom owns 60%. Rebecca owns, the other 20%. And then also specifying when does all the members get paid, once a month, once a quarter, so that everything flows well. And whenever there's a question, you just go to the Constitution or the operating agreement to see what's supposed to happen. And with these days, with the internet being so revolutionary, some of these things you can get online. Of course, you can hire counsel. I would love for you to hire us, but at the same time, there's so much technology these days to where you can learn some of it yourself and draft some of it yourself. If you don't want to pay a lawyer, but that's key for that. And then also Wyoming LLCs, because some people, they want to create LLCs and they don't want anyone to really know that they're the owner of it. So like different laws have more privacy. So like in Georgia, if I were to set up an LLC as an organizer, someone could go online and see that, Gabriel Kingdom is, the organizer of the Kingdom Law Firm. But if I didn't want someone to know about that, then I may, set up an LLC in Wyoming where it's not publicly disclosed, who's the owner of that LLC. So just using the law to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And then another important contract is a will. And a will is a contract for what happens to your assets after you pass on, after you transition. And I know sometimes, people hear these legal terms like a will, but all a will is a piece of paper saying, hey, I leave to all my heirs equally my house, any vehicles that I own, any money in my bank accounts, to my three children to be shared equally. That's a will. Of course, depending on the state that you're in, you have to have certain like signatures. Like in Georgia, you have to have two non-interested parties to sign off, just stating that that he really did sign this will. But a will is just a contract, just like we've been talking about the entire day. Is that contract is the foundation of enterprise, of commerce, of America. So a will is something that's important to have. And then also a trust is another contract. And a trust is a more private will, which determines and directs what happens to your assets after you pass. And it can go on for multiple generations. So you say, all right, I want everything to go to my children. And then I also want my grandchildren who are minors, when they turn 25, I want a percentage to go to them. And then when their children becomes 18, I want a percentage to go to them. So a trust is a little more expansive than a will because it can survive multiple generations. And also it's more private because with a will, you may have signed the will, but you still have to go to what's called a probate court in order to allow it to be affirmed that, this is an actual will. But in a trust, you don't have to go to a probate court. Everything passes automatically just based on the document. So it's just a document that's ordering everything, ordering your footsteps. And another thing that you can do is you can have a trust that actually owns your LLCs. Like, you have multiple LLCs, and the owner of the LLCs could be the family trust, so that all your assets will stay in your family trust. And here's an example of that kind of dynamic, where at the top you have the trust, and then underneath that you have the real estate holding companies, which own the houses, the real properties. And then you have another holding company that owns vehicles, trailers, tractor trailers, but everything is being essentially owned by the trust. And then just another hypothetical for creative ways to get funding. So let's say hypothetically, you want to open a smoothie shop and it's going to cost $25,000. So you utilize the contracts again. Maybe it's hard to find one person that's going to pay $25,000 to let you, invest 25,000. But you can find five people and they invest $5,000 a piece, and you give them a contract, so they have some assurances that, when this smoothie business, jumps off, they're going to get their money back, and also get a percentage, like a 6% of your gross revenue for the first 12 months. So they invest $5,000 in your smoothie business, and they're getting 6% of your revenue a month. Revenue is 10,000 a month, which is 600 a month to the investor, and then at the end of the year, they just got $7,200 on a $5,000 investment. But also understand the difference between an investment and a loan. When you invest, there's always a risk that it doesn't pan out, that the smoothie business doesn't blow up. And if it doesn't, then, the investor loses that money. And then also other ways to get startup capital is using credit cards, 0% introductory rates for 12 to 15 months. Use that to, buy the equipment for your smoothie business, and you're off to the races. Or you can use that to extract cash out. Because let's say you have a friend who's about to, pay $5,000 for a lawnmower with cash. You can say, hey, use my credit card, and instead of paying 5,000, pay me 4,800, and I have the cash to do what I need from using my credit card. So that's another idea. And then just going to personal injury law, which is a large part of what I do. Contract is huge there as well, because when someone hits someone negligently in an auto accident case, I'm not necessarily going after the driver. I'm more so going after that driver's insurance contract, because they have an insurance contract saying that they'll pay up to $50,000 in damages if their driver was negligent or liable. So we're using contract law in order to get a personal injury settlement. So that's leveraging the law for intellectual currency. Of course, there's more things to discuss, but just wanted to empower all of us to be lawyers, whether you have a license to practice law, or you're just a lawyer who wants to understand where you're at, wants to understand the laws of this jurisdiction, and wants to use it to your advantage.